ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stream, and welcome to This Anime, the podcast that talks about anime past, present, and future, all with the exclamation of, This Anime. And I am not alone this month on the show. I am actually joined with a guest, ladies and gentlemen. He is a producer on Twig, a show that I watch. I listen to, watch, what the hell am I talking about? Listen to, and he is Alex.
Hello. Yes, well, you can, technically we have stuff on YouTube, but it's very rare, so.
Exactly. Yeah, so we are going to be tackling some interesting stuff on the show, and oh god, why did I not change the stream information? That would help. This is why I don't. This is. I totally forgot to do that.
You know what?
This
it is a
morning.
lot more fun when things don't go 100% perfect. Believe me, there are so many times where I have wanted to release audio that when recording Twig that I've been vetoed down out of because of, no, Alex, you can't do that. The world would hate us and know our shame.
Anyway, we are going to be covering two very interesting topics. We're going to be covering my favorite series of all time, and that is called Dragonaut the Resonance, as well as Tokyo Godfathers, which this episode was planned months and months earlier, and luck of the draw, G-Kids announced very recently that they had acquired the rights to Tokyo Godfathers and were doing a 4K remaster and re-releasing it in theaters and then probably releasing it on Blu-ray. And I was just like, well, shit.
And you said in like with a new dub or something too, right?
Yep, there is a new dub, and that is going to be in March. And I'm probably just going to cover that on the show, just a quick little tidbit. Probably either on this show or on Movie Nation. More than likely Movie Nation. But yeah. That is interesting. That was an interesting conundrum to come across when I was like, oh, well, crap. And let me tell you, when we get to Tokyo Godfathers, the fact of the matter is, that is a pain in the ass to watch legally.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, well, even if you go by means of the illegal ways, quote unquote.
If you went through the gray area of trying to find a stream or something, for something as praised as it is, it's surprisingly, it's like they don't want you to watch it. Like you're not allowed to own it. You're not allowed to view it. You're not allowed to do anything with it. Sony doesn't want you to know this existed, but G-Kids does.
I mean, the only thing that they do, the only like current way to get it on Blu-ray is to import an Australian Blu-ray copy, which is locked to Australian regions, which stinks because normally exactly. Umbrella doesn't do region locking, but apparently they have to for
I was going to say most of the time anything I've imported from Australia hasn't had a region lock. Same with England, and then when it does, it usually means that there's like something very strict about the current legal status of it in North America.
Yeah. Well, that's gonna change in the next like 6 months because the G-Kids will finally have a Blu-ray out of that. And it's the first time it's been out on Blu-ray in North America. So that's a positive. But we're going to, before we get into Tokyo Godfathers, we're going to actually talk Dragonaut the Resonance, This is my favorite series of all time, and I'll tell you why. Because it is just so... It has everything that I kind of enjoyed at the time when I was younger. Much, much younger. I mean, this show is over 10 years old at this point.
Fair enough. Like, I was somebody who went into it not ever hearing of it before, being a little older too than, well, obviously a lot older than you would have been when you first watched it. And I was like, what? like I got through about 8 episodes and I went, what? What's happening? Like, and I'm somebody who gets the plot, and I'm like, what is happening? People are this. I'm like,
ironically, the plot actually simplifies after episode 10.
Okay, because I'm like, so is it like a pervert harem show? Sort of.
It was advertised like that because, at least in North America.
Well, and I'm like, okay. Oh, some of this voice acting is oof. But then I'm like, okay.
The dub is bad.
I have to remember that I watched anime as a kid in the 90s, and then I really didn't want... I watched, like, Pat Labor and a couple things in the early 2000s when I would rent it on video. But, like, from 2004 until 2017, I really watched no anime. So there is a whole period where there was a lot of stuff getting dubbed that is in a different... First of all, the shows are in a very different style than what I grew up on or what's out there maybe now. But there was wildly lower quality in most dubs in that period. It was like after that 90s boom, but before the resurgence now. And so I'm like, okay, I got to take the dub into account. Like, it's not going to be perfect, but I'm still watching it. And I'm like, wait, people are what? What's going on? This show are so young.
Trust me. This show does not explain itself very well.
I'm the person's a dragon and they want to have sex with the space dragon, but something happens and then this person turns into this, and then they're forcing them to touch the dragons, which may be like God, and then it turns. I'm like, what the? It's like somebody who was writing for Ava dropped acid and then made the show.
There's a lot of, again, like, having seen a lot more anime afterwards, I see I see a lot of Ava influence. I see a lot of Code Geass influence in this show. There's a lot of influences that happen.
Yeah. Like, here's the thing: the animation is not like super high tier. It's not something that like Sunrise would have come up with at the time.
It's still, Gonzo. They're not the best.
You know what? It's
Gonzo
it's
Studios.
Better than a lot of the crap out there now. I'll say that. Like 50% of the junk that gets pushed out now is so poorly animated. Oh, the only thing that bugged me with this show, like animation wise, there's a few times in that first 8 episodes I watched, I'm like, that went off model. That went off model. That went off model. That went off model. Stop doing this. I'm not somebody who usually notices that. I'm like, why does that character look completely different this scene or this episode? But I'm like, I get where you're coming from. I'm like, okay, I got to figure your age. I'm like, you're probably like a young teenager watching this. I'm like, this is probably really cool shit. If I had seen this in like circa 99 or 2000 when I was like 13,
oh yeah,
I would have been like, yes, this would have been my shit.
I was like 16.
Yeah, I would have been like, this is my stuff right here. Like, whereas
and still like even going back through this series, immediately I was like, oh god, the dub is worse than I thought it was.
Well, and what that is what that really shows now is the quality. Like, now that Funimation is doing like simuldubs, like they've stepped up their game. They got 2 or 3 teams doing stuff now, whereas back then they would have had an A team and a B team at the most. And the A team would have just been anything Dragon Ball related. Yep,
pretty much.
And like now they've got like full studio, and then it's not just them. Now you've got whom else? I forget which
Sentai
studio.
has. Well, Sentai contracts their stuff out. Never mind.
Yes, Sentai contracts their stuff out. You've also got. I think Discotech has started producing a couple dubs. So has
Crunchyroll has started dubbing
Crunchyroll
stuff
is
themselves.
dubbing. You've got what is it? Viz is still dubbing stuff.
Yep.
So you've got probably.
I mean, really, the only significant dubs that Viz does is JoJo, but that's about it.
Yeah. Well, I think didn't they handle the new Joe boxing one, the Megalobox?
Megalobox? I don't think that was Viz. I think that was Funny. I would have to double check,
because I think it was produced specifically for Adult Swim. So like I know
the dub itself.
Yeah,
more than likely it's Funimation.
Yeah, maybe it makes sense, but I know it wasn't part of Funimation's streaming service.
Oh no, it's Viz.
Yeah, because I know that Viz signed a deal with Adult Swim to do some like exclusive dubs on this past season and this season now. So you've got about 5 or 6 companies employing probably, let's be honest, probably about 30 voice actors.
30 at most, yeah.
Yeah, male and female voice actors, but like they're all now top tier. Like they're like, if you're not good, you're not in there.
And the one thing I will say about Dragonaut, there is a voice actress who's both the English and the Japanese voice actress. I absolutely adore the two of them because they've been in some really good stuff.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
also,
I wasn't trying to say everybody's bad. I'm just saying,
yeah, no.
The overall that, and it's also a lot of times the voice direction, I think, is what people.
Oh yeah, the voice direction
because the talent can be good. It's just if they're not given the proper direction, you end up with interesting results. Which again, this is not a horrible dub, but it's a dub where you're like, oh, this is not modern.
Oh, definitely not. I mean, like, maybe it's also because I was a lot younger and could deal with the dubs.
You were a lot younger, and you were like, I want a dragon girlfriend. I want a space dragon girlfriend. And you were not wrong.
My favorite character is not one of the dragon characters.
Fair enough.
Yeah, oddly enough. It's not one of the dragon characters because I'm like, it's not my type.
But yeah, space dragon's not my type either for the most part.
Yeah, but the Japanese voice actress is Miyuki Sawashiro. Jesus, I love dealing with Japanese names sometimes. But you probably will recognize her because she does a lot of Japanese RPGs.
Oh, probably, yeah.
And
it's one of those
whenever she shows up in an RPG, I'm just like, yes,
I don't usually pay attention to the names, but I know I'd hear the voice because of the amount of Japanese games I end up playing that aren't dubbed.
Yeah. Heck, I bought a really rare 3DS game simply because she's one of the main character voices in the game. The game's okay, but like that was immediately like, yes. I didn't even have to look it up because when I was playing the demo, I was going through like the voice choices and I'm just like, that's Miyuki 100%. And then I looked it up and I was like, yep, that's correct. And also Miyuki's done some other significant roles. Let me go. She's in Durarara as one of the main characters. She does a couple of voices in Fairy Tail. She's done some Full Metal Panic. She has her hand in a lot of stuff. She's also the Japanese voice of Stella in the Hells movie, which is a very, very good film. Though, honestly, if you're going to buy the discotheque copy of Hells, watch it for the English dub because pretty much all of Team 4 Stars a part of that dub.
See, all properties I've heard of, all properties I now have to watch. Like, so can you, explain to me the plot so I understand how this works with the show? Because I got in and I was like, okay, I got eight episodes in, and I was like, I gave up on it initially a couple months ago. Then I came back in, watched a few more episodes, and then I was like, oh, no, Ken's going to have to explain this to me.
Okay. So, this is the whole title of Dragonaut is Dragon Astronaut. And in the show, there are two different types of dragons. Essentially, these dragons are called dragons, but they're aliens. They're friggin' aliens. And they come from a hurtling asteroid called Thanatos, which took out Pluto. Like, completely obliterated Pluto. And the government organization called the ISDA, International Space, I forget the full acronym. It's International Space something or other. And they are a special, like, government task force that is... It's essentially NASA. And they have a secret government project called the D Project, which is they have created artificial Earth-born dragons to combat Thanatos and the other the dragons that are coming from Thanatos. And there aren't many dragons that come from Thanatos, oddly enough. This series does not have a lot of them that come down. There's, I think, a total of 4 or 5 original dragons in the series. And also, the main thing is that through connection to humanity, these dragons can now transform into human form. And that is essentially what the connection to humanity is, what allows them to turn into humans. And and we follow our main character, Jin, who lost his family in a horrible shuttle accident. And
to be honest, I laughed hysterically at how
it's
boom! And he just floats down like nothing.
And then the reaction,
like nothing's wrong. It's boom, and all I could think of was he went up like the Challenger. And I was like, "Oh, Alex, that's dark." And then I giggled like a little schoolgirl at it.
Well, this is another history lesson, personal history lesson. I once attempted to do an abridged series of this show. I only got through the first episode, but it was... I literally fast forwarded through the joke was with the shuttle. I fast forwarded the whole shuttle takeoff until the explosion. And it was just like this quick cutaway joke where it's just like, hope we don't explode. Like, very, very... there are some jokes that I made in that first episode where I'm like, okay, these are actually good jokes and not shit. 90% of it was shit. And of course, that first episode doesn't exist anymore because Funimation copyrighted that YouTube video to oblivion.
Because of course.
Well, that was when Funimation was also putting the series out on YouTube, which it's still on YouTube if you want to watch it. but it's also available on literally any other streaming service. It's on Funimation streaming service. It's also on Crunchyroll. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that, and basically it's NASA or evil organization is trying to stop, control, or kill them, right?
Basically, the organization is attempting to save the planet because Thanatos is heading towards Earth, and it's going to collide with Earth and destroy Earth. So they got to do something about it. And the only way to... And they don't have the capabilities of interplanetary travel. They only... The farthest we've gotten in terms of colonization is the moon. And we have a small colony on Mars. That is... Like, interplanetary travel is still not exactly viable, especially when you're heading all the way to Pluto. And so that is the whole concept of the dragons. The dragons can do interplanetary travel very, very quickly.
Okay. So, where the idea is, I guess, that one of the really powerful dragons,
one of the original,
one
of our main,
falls in love with a boy because, of course, every anime has to be about like a 14-year-old boy.
He's like 16, I believe.
Ooh, he's old.
16. He's like 16, 17.
He's super old boy. And then from there, their love will save the universe.
Yep, pretty much.
So basically, what ends up happening, because I did not finish it completely because I was like, plot explain. I'm assuming they somehow magically move the planet or do something.
Oh, they just talk to Thanatos, and Thanatos leaves.
They talk to the asteroid.
Yeah, because the asteroid is actually inside the asteroid is another dragon. Because of course.
Yes.
And that's Mother.
Oh, okay. And then he's like, "Hey, could you not do that because your daughter fell in love with this ape man on this weird
pretty
planet?"
much. Pretty much.
Cool. You know what? I honestly think the plot and story and the whole getup of this could be really, really well done if they did a remake. Because I know that's like a really popular thing to do. Is like,
you could rework. You can rework this in a new take and do it better.
Now,
obviously,
how much of the episodes were filler? Like, could they do it in like a 12 or 13 episode arc, or would they still need the 26?
You still need. Well, it's technically the 26th episode is just a OVA.
Okay, so it's like, so you think they could do it in 22?
Possibly. You could truncate a couple of things. Truncate most of the beginning.
Because maybe for like modern aesthetics and pacing.
Yeah, just like 10. It takes 10 episodes to actually get. Let me think. Actually, no, it takes 12 episodes before the series actually gets its feet.
Which you can see why I was like 8 episodes and I'm like, huh? So nothing's really happening. People are chasing people. They like when I was watching, I'm like, they just keep introducing more weird people. There's like that are vying.
It's for... Yeah, this show suffers from the pronoun game, as I like to call it, where it throws a bunch of terms at you and doesn't explain shit.
Well, and they kept introducing like new people. I'm like, are they from the same agency? Are they? Oh wait, they're a competing agency. But how come that was never explained in the first episode, like you should do for every single show ever?
Yes.
So yeah, there's some pacing issues at obviously at the beginning, but it sounds like it's got a pretty solid plot once you get rolling in it.
Oh yeah, this it's really the second half of the series that made me 100% fall in love with it. Oddly enough, when my favorite character dies. It's just like, God damn it.
Of course. So now you got to really hope they do a remake.
Well, here's the thing. The character I'm speaking of is integral to the actual plot, and her death is integral to everything.
Oh, boy. Okay.
So it's like, yeah. But now that we've waxed Muse for like 20 minutes to a half hour, I'm gonna start breaking this down episode by episode here.
Alrighty.
So the first episode, obviously every single episode title in this series is one word plus a subtitle. And they're all very simple, defining characteristics of the episode. So it like spells the entire thing out for you. Pretty easily. And the first episode is called Resonance Hand in Hand, and we get this takes place 2 years in the past. Most of the episode takes place 2 years in the past, at least the beginning. You get introduced to Jin, and you get introduced to Kazuki, his best friend, who we'll get into Kazuki later on. He's a weird dude, and his character goes in weird places very, very quickly. And there's a huge shuttle crash, and his dad, who is a pilot, is taking him and his family and a whole bunch of other passengers to the moon, because his mom is an astronomer, which is like very significant, I guess, but not. It's significant to the episode, but they don't really touch upon it any other time. Because I guess it kind of establishes the fact that going to the moon is very expensive and is a luxury to people of Earth. And so he gets to go to he's going to space with his family, and there's a huge shuttle accident. The shuttle basically explodes in midair. And turns out he becomes the only survivor of that said accident. And he ends up running into a secondary one of the Earthborn dragons in the series, who is eating people. Basically doing serial killings. There's that are happening and going on throughout the I forget the name of the city that they're in, but it's not Tokyo. Because we go to Tokyo later on in the show. And essentially that is he runs into the Earthborn dragon, and the dragon is killing people. He encounters a girl, and that he encounters the dragon eating the person, freaks out, runs away, dragon chases him, and a woman comes in and saves his ass because, yeah. And he ends up giving him a kiss in midair flight, and that's essentially the first episode.
He gets all horned up in the series.
Kinda.
Yeah, like I did find it funny when you just the way it was shown on screen. I don't know if that was it was probably not intentional.
Oh yeah, and there are times in this series, especially in the second episode, because we get introduced to the concept of how the humans connect with the Earthborn dragons, and I'm like, I have a feeling the director of this was gay. Because there's a lot of naked dudes in this show.
Yeah, the show has a lot of either intentional or unintentional homoeroticism in it. Also, yeah, like the way that the connections are, I don't know, like not that maybe that wasn't the intention, but it's definitely how, at least in the West, we would interpret it.
Oh yeah, there's a couple of them where you're just like, that seems a little homoerotic.
And you're like, is that really the way you needed to do that?
And essentially, in order for them to connect with the dragons, the dragon eggs need to suck out the life force out of you. Some life force out of you.
Yeah, it's a little vampiric and a little... I don't know, almost like you're it's like you're attached almost like umbilically to their soul or something.
Actually, later on in the series, they kind of explain it a little more, and you kind of understand, okay, every single Earthborn dragon or every time a dragon performs resonance with a human, there is some element of that person in the dragon in terms of their human form. So it's interesting. There is the only character where I don't understand the connection between the dragon and the human is Kazuki and Gyo. And yeah, that is the only one I don't understand. And as we go on, I'll kind of give the 411 on what each dragon's connection with their human is and how that relates to them as a human being. And the next episode, Jin wakes up at the ISDA. He meets Siglinde, and she is she's supposed to be the foreign character in this show, because she's part German. If her name wasn't already obvious. And she ends up saying, all right, you're in the ISDA, and the director of the Dragon Project, which I need to finish pulling up the name list here. The director is Sakaki, and he basically informs Jin that no, what we gave to the press wasn't the truth. Your dad wasn't the fault of the accident. It was actually this Earthborn dragon from Thanatos. And Jin's kind of pissed off. For a good reason. And he's just like, no, you tell the truth to people because that's fucked up. And so, yeah.
Yeah, like imagine being told that though.
yeah. And they're like, and Saki basically goes like, what do you expect? What do you think's gonna happen if we give this information to the public? Mass fucking hysteria is what's gonna happen. Because, oh hey, the asteroid we said isn't going to hit Earth is hitting Earth, and there's aliens and shit. Like, really? You think that's a good idea? And he ends up running into Kazuki, who's kind of like, oh, you're here, Jin. Wait, why are you here? And Jin goes like, alright, I need to go see the hot chick that I met. And turns out this was all an elaborate plan for the ISDA to try and capture Toa, who is the name of the mysterious girl that rescued him last episode. And at the end of the episode, she reveals that she is actually a dragon. And kind of freaks Jin out a little bit. And that is the end of episode 2. Episode 3, we get the reveal of, okay, there's the mysterious, like, crazy serial killer dragon is called Spiritus, and he is now Spiritus is now run amok because of the will of his human who has gone crazy. Because, of course, as you do. And Spiritus ends up killing what's his face, who cares, really. And as a result, the rest of the squad of Dragonauts, so you have Howling Star, the 3 dragons, Howling Star, Machina, and Amadeus, and their pilots, Reina, Akira, and Siglinde, respectively. All 3 of them transform into dragons, and they do this very Sailor Moon-esque transformation sequence that only gets used like 3 times in the entire series, which is kind of weird. You'd think they do reuse this animation a lot more. And then and then they all transform into dragons, and Toa then tries to take Spiritus away, and that her basically Toa's song awakens Gyo early from his egg, who is quote unquote Kazuki's dragon, and Gyo just like shows up, and Kazuki's like, wait, what? And Gyo transforms into a dragon and goes to chase Toa, and Jin literally hops on his back. And for some reason, this breaks Kazuki as a character. He just like, this is where he snaps and goes, wait, what? Gyo's my dragon. Why is Jin riding him? This makes no sense. And this is where Kazuki as a character just completely falls apart.
There's a lot of twists and turns in the show.
Yeah. Also, Alex, you might want to mess with your mic a little bit because I'm hearing static.
How about now?
Nope, there we go.
I think it was
Yep,
slightly loose connection.
Yep, just a slight loose connection there. But yeah, there's a lot in these first few episodes to explain. This series is so hard to truncate into an explanation because there's so much that happens so quickly. Which made it really hard to, like, when I did the abridged series, all I touched was the first episode. And
yeah.
I cut it down from like a 22-minute episode to like 10 minutes. It was There's a lot.
That's the thing. Like we did the main sort of overview of what happens, but it's like I almost do feel like it's one of the ones you kind of have to watch because explaining it is going to take probably as long as the episodes themselves just to describe what's happening.
Yeah, there's a lot in these first few episodes, and there's a lot of names, there's a lot of there's a lot of side characters that show up very, very minuscule moments, and there's like there's backstory for characters that you have no idea, you would never understand unless you wiki dive into some of the characters. It's weird, but like Kazuki as a character is such it's like, okay, best friend hops on my dragon, and this is kind of the essential theming of the series, where it's like, what are the dragons for? Are the dragons for companionship? Are the dragons tools? And that essentially is the crux of the series for the most part, where it constantly is asking, what are the dragons for? What are these dragons for? Are they for companionship, or are they something more than just tools? And it like the series constantly is trying to send that out as a message, but it gets muddled because there's so much other shit going on.
Yeah, like it's I wonder if they could have streamlined some things, but I almost feel like the appeal of the show is the what's happening. wait, what's going to happen? Almost like it's like a Japanese anime sci-fi soap opera.
Yeah, pretty much. This is a literal soap opera for the most part. And when people go like, when I go like, I'm not really big on action shows, this is kind of the first time where I'm like, oh, anime could do other shit besides action.
Yeah, like on face value, you'd be like, oh, it's an action show, but it's like, yeah, it is, but nah, not 100%.
Yeah, it's more soap opera than it is action, and it gets really soap opera-y later on, because it basically the first few episodes are just like, all right, we have the whole Spiritist situation had the issue that there were there was a whole issue with the fact that now people in public have seen these dragons, so the ISDA has to actually come out and say, look, and basically they have to tell the truth about Thanatos and the fact that we have these earthborn dragons here to use them as tools to save the earth. And that is like the first couple episodes, and then we have this secondary force here called the Gillard force, which is kind of this military monarchy in this world, Like they're they're a monarch, and they in true Japanese fashion, the monarchy is kind of secondary to the military. Essentially the military is all that represents that faction, essentially, and that is run by Garnet, who is the big bouncy boob lady of this, one of the two big bouncy boob ladies of this show.
And when you say big bouncy boob, it's big bouncy boobs.
Yep. Totally. And the one thing that does bother me about the show, besides the two female pilots, all the females in the show have big boobs and big saggy boobs for the most part.
Like half-empty milk bags. But
yeah. It's kind of like, is that your thing? Okay.
It looks like somebody filled up two plastic shopping bags half full of spaghetti and then just put a bra on it.
Yeah, kind of. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, give or take, in terms of character design.
Somebody in the art department was into that, and cool for them, I guess.
I guess. By the way, some of the people that worked in the art department also worked on Sword Art Online. Can you tell?
Doesn't surprise me whatsoever.
Yeah. And you've got all these characters that get introduced, and you're just like, okay, who are you? This show is a mess. Don't get me wrong, but this show is, if you can get past the mess, there is some actual good in it.
Oh, and I'm not trying to troll the show or anything. It's like, people can love things that are imperfect, and if you love the show, you love the show. Great. Like, there's plenty of things I love. I love some things because they're terrible. I love some things because they're flawed, but to me, they speak to me. And this is one of those shows that speaks to you. I look at it and I'm like, to me, it's just another show in the pack that came out around that time period. But I can totally see how, if you watched it at the right time and you were in the right mindset, you're like, this becomes your show.
Yep. And it's weird looking back at it and rewatching the whole series from start to finish. This is the first time I've watched it from start to finish since I originally watched it, by the way. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, I've very much grown up in a lot of ways, and my taste has grown tremendously.
Was the thing when you're like, it's my favorite show ever. It's like, it's so amazing. And I was like, okay. And I think I watched like that night episodes, and you hadn't yet. And I sent you a message like a few days later. I'm like, dude, that show is kind of terrible. You're like, what? I'm like, I'm not trying to be mean, but like, dude. I was like, in my mind before I had even seen it, I was like, okay, so if it's that amazing, it's gonna have like TMS late 80s, early 90s animation, or something like Sunrise's budget, and it's gonna have, a fantastic dub and all this like Ava writing and all. No, it's just a pretty cool average early mid 2000s show that, if you love the themes that are in it, you're going to love it.
Right. And I'm going to stop kind of going through episode by episode, because again, it's going to take forever to talk about.
Well, it's not just that. By the time you get to the end, people are going to be like, wait, what happened? It is a show that is probably best visualized, like seeing it yourself.
Yeah. And every single, like, all the characters, all the pilots versus the dragons, each one represents a different aspect of them. Like, when it comes to Howling Star and Rhina, the connection between the two of them gets revealed in the second half of the series. most of this stuff gets revealed in the second half of the series. Howling Star is part elemented through Rhina's interpretation of Jin's father. Because Jin's father actually recommended Rhina to the D Project in the first place. And Rhina kind of looked up to Jin's father. And Howling Star is kind of a representation of that. And when it comes to Akira, Machina is to her the perfect woman. And everything that she isn't. And it comes to that point where she's just like, no, fuck it. I'm me. I'm gonna be me. And that's exactly why Akira is actually my favorite character, not only in this series of all time, because of that kind of emotional arc that kind of connects with me personally.
Which is good, because you don't usually see that in just every anime, right? So it's nice that, and you probably hit that arc right when you're at the right age where you're like, wait, cartoons can be meaningful?
Yep, 100%. And then also, to a certain extent, Jin kind of, because it turns out Jin had a resonance with Toa, and that's why she can turn into a human. I would guess Toa is kind of like the perfect girlfriend kind of character. This is just me interpreting that. And then Siglinde, literally there's an entire episode dedicated to her character later on in the series, where they have to hide out in her family's summer home in Japan, and it turns out her dad's there. And speaking of which, there's a time jump in this show. There's a time jump, not at the halfway point, which is really freaking weird. The time jump happens on episode 18.
So 3/4 of the way through?
Yeah, about. Because
now, was it planned that way, or what? Do you know if it was?
I don't know whether it was
renewed for another season or something, and then they're like, "Hey, we just got to finish it up."
No, I think it was already planned as 25 episodes, but I think the fact that they had to spend so much time explaining stuff and getting through everything, that the time jump didn't happen in the middle of the series like intended, I guess. Because the final 6 episodes go by at the speed of sound. There are so many different plot lines going at the same time that you're just kind of like,
case of I was just looking it up. It's not a case of a manga came first, the manga came after, because sometimes
this is an original piece. This is an original series,
which is weird to put the time jump there then, because you figure it would have already been planned. Because when it's a manga, you can be like, okay, so maybe there's an issue with pacing of the story, or sometimes they'll be like, we have to fit so many volumes of manga into this one season, and then they'll do that. But no, it sounds like they're just like, well, they probably had a longer story planned out, and then they're like, well, we're getting 25 episodes plus a side story. How long do you think it'll take to set up the story? And they're like, a couple episodes. And then they start storyboarding, and they're like, no, it's going to take half the show.
And for the record, the director of Dragonaut is also the director of SAO, the latest season of SAO.
Oh, okay.
So there are a lot of, and also the like the entire latest arc of SAO is directed by him, and he's also worked on Hellsing as a episode director, and a storyboard artist, and he's had connections with some stuff. This was really his first outing as a full-fledged series director. Given his track record, and it's just like, okay, as a first series, this isn't. I've seen worse.
Well, yeah, and there's always growing pains, especially when you're under the kind of pressure they're under to produce that many episodes as your first main show. So pretty good overall. You know what I think might have hurt it a little bit in the West? All the promotional posters and everything for it, the font they used for the show.
Mm-hmm.
It has a very like bargain basement video game sort of font that almost looks like it was done in like MS Paint.
I mean, this is circa when were these DVDs printed?
Probably 08 or 09 or something like that.
Yeah, 09, I believe.
Now, like, that's the kind of font you used to see on the boxes for VHS tapes in the like mid 90s.
Oh yeah, this is the era where Funimation was just starting to pick up steam on other properties.
Well, it was after the death of ADV and basically everything else in Texas. Like, this is before they all splintered off into Sentai Filmworks, and like at that point you had was 4Kids still putting crap out, and
4Kids was still putting crap out at the time.
Viz, I think Bandai Visual was dying right then too, at least in the West.
Bandai Visual didn't fold until like 5 years ago, I believe.
Is it really? That's just, yeah, but it's in the area. Okay, well,
it was basically when they released Code Geass, when Funimation released Code Geass on Blu-ray. That Blu-ray was originally produced under Bandai Namco before they folded.
Okay.
So, like a couple of years ago. And then basically Funimation came and picked up all the other licenses that Bandai had. So it was Code Geass, Cowboy Bebop, I believe, was a part of that as well.
And then I think, what was it? Manga Video. I think they're coming back, but they were dead. Like the big players were all basically folding around that time, except for Funimation, and it's because they had that sweet Dragon Ball license.
They had Dragon Ball. That was the only thing that saved them.
Pretty much, because like you look at the all the big companies. Like I've received review copies from Animigo, and like they were the ones that did Bubblegum Crisis. But back in the '90s and early 2000s. They were as big as Funimation, if not bigger, like now, like how many properties they had. And all these companies basically like shriveled up and disappeared. And Funimation is like, mine, I'll take it. I'll take that. Oh, we're just going to release another Dragon Ball Blu-ray or DVD. And even though it's barely any different and is probably worse quality than the previous release, but we're going to still make like $10 million so we can buy that property and this property.
Yep.
And now they're the giant empire. And
now they're owned by Sony.
I mean, good on them. Like they made some bank on that. But yeah, it's weird. I would have figured, like I wasn't watching a lot of anime, like I said, like really at all. But I would have figured I would have heard of this, like around that time period. I was just out of high school. I was working, but like,
yeah,
I had literally never heard of this until you told me.
Yeah, I forgot. I think I was in a big anime kick and was just looking at shows about dragons, like related to dragons, and this came up and I was just like, oh, this looks interesting. And then I started watching and I was like, shit, this is actually really cool.
Well, did it get a broadcast here or was it just the discs?
I believe it was just discs.
That might explain it.
And
like
the early days of Funimation streaming.
Okay, so because like my younger brother was all, like pretty much watched anime throughout that time period. He's 6 years younger than me, so he would have watched this sort of thing had it been on TV.
Oh,
For sure.
Funimation didn't really broadcast anything except Dragon Ball.
They never really had any other deal. Like, no, I mean, remember Canada's a little different. So
I know, but
we
it
had
was...
like there was a point where, well, I guess no, Ocean was dubbing everything. We used to get a lot more back in the day.
Yeah, it was. This was a series that failed miserably. By the way,
and you know what, and yet it still, gained life, and it wouldn't surprise me if they, were to redo it, or obviously, are the discs, like the save editions, are they still in print?
No. There's just so much of it. Like, if you go to Right Stuff, I believe the save edition is like $20, not even. Yeah, it's like just a little over $20.
Okay, well that in Canada,
and
no,
that was
that would cost us about.
That was a 2012. Yeah, that was a 2012.
Oh, that version
DVD release. Yeah.
Let me see here. Okay,
yeah.
In Canada, Amazon sells it, the 2012 version.
Oh yeah, well, Amazon sells everything Right Stuff has, so it's like. Yeah.
Well, not really. Not in Canada. They don't have a distributor up here.
Well, also Right Stuff just started shipping to Canada.
Yeah, and they charge like I looked at it at
a motherfucker.
Yeah, it's like $50 to import it plus import fees, and it's like buy like let's say you buy a $50 item, it ends up being
I saved
like $120.
I saved like $30 buying them, shipping them to me, and then shipping them up to Dodd. That's how much how much it was worth it.
Yeah. Now I forgot though, Funimation does distribute all their stuff through Amazon up here, so it's $22 directly from Funimation and Amazon, which that's actually a really good deal considering like the episode count and everything. Like you're not getting any fancy box or anything, but
hey, and it's also a bare bones release because it has a total of a couple two commentaries. Yeah, 2 commentaries. Tracks for 2 episodes. Oddly enough, it's the English voice actor of Akira and the director. Because the English voice actor for Akira is also now I believe she's done some directing work on some Funimation stuff currently.
Oh, cool. Yeah. But it still suffers. Like you can read the Dragonaut on the side, but the cover suffers from. If you try to read the name, like just the title,
it's a cluster. You can't read that for shit.
Anything after drag, those aren't letters. I swear they're not.
It's a terrible logo. You have no idea. For the record, the image that I have here, it was nearly impossible to. The logo for the series, that's not on the image. I had to add that.
Yeah.
And it was I mean, I still use I use the lasso tool mostly to get the actual text out, but sometimes some of the lassoing was just a pain in the neck to get through and get rid of.
But yeah, like it's I guess my personal final thoughts on the show are like it's worth a watch for sure. I'm gonna have to power through it now. But
I will say episode 26, the first half of the episode of the OVA is actually friggin' hilarious because it's a spoof on a like high school, generic high school anime show. And all the characters are all like high school anime tropes. Every single character is all different in it, and it's all these anime tropes, and it's actually kind of hilarious.
Well, that'll be worth it. It's like almost like you watch the whole show and then you get a little treat.
Yeah, the OVA is purely a treat. The second half of the OVA you can just skip. It's stupid as all hell. And it's fan service. It's fan service everything is fan service in that second half. And this series came from Gonzo Studios, who at the time was infamous for their fan service. Like, this is the same group that at the time had released Rosario plus Vampire. And that is pure fan service to the extreme. Even
I love the whole,
even to the point where they
like,
censored the fan service.
I was going to say that they're like, hey, we're not hentai, we promise.
Yeah, pretty much.
We promise.
Pretty much that's what Gonzo would do.
We're not hentai, we promise, but we're going to advertise like we are just so we can get 12-year-old boys to buy it.
Oh yeah, 100%. But like the theming of this series and the character progression is really what kept me going throughout watching them. I originally watched them streamed through Funimation back in the day, because Funimation was just starting their streaming stuff and was doing it for free at the time. Like, this was like the beginning. They just wanted to get people's eyes on the website and watch their shit for free. Except for Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball was never...
Well, Dragon Ball will never be free because they know they can get money.
Yeah, well, Funimation pulled some bullshit recently with Dragon Ball, with that collector's set that's using another bastardization of the original material.
Yeah, and they always use that excuse of, we have to apply DNR. No. Just give it, like, their Funimation.
You don't have to, especially with Dragon Ball, you don't need the DNR.
They're basically, like, the way they handle it is the way, like, the Star Wars original trilogy's been handled when it comes to releases.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I know, now that Disney's a part of Fox, they own the full rights to the original New Hope. The question is there an original copy of that in existence?
Well, there's that fan restoration that is already as good, if not better, than what they would release in 4K. And
I mean, I have the fan restoration sitting on my PC.
Like, there's that original fan restoration, but there's a new one. I think it's just called 77 4K or 4K 77 edition or something, and it's been restored in 4K, but they're not doing the despecialize. They're not doing that. They actually found an original 35 millimeter duplicate that was used for European release. Ooh, and cool. They sync that with the Blu-ray audio.
Nice.
I will
check that out,
because the audio is better, obviously, on the new ones, but they've synced it 100%, and they actually spent their own money to clean up and restore, like, just the debris and dirt off the picture. And so they've done that with that, and Jedi also has one out, and Empire, they're in the middle of restoring it. They found original prints for each, and so they're like, oh, really? You're saying that the originals weren't stored properly and this and this? We found these in some guy's basement in Italy. And these are in better condition.
That's the answer to everything. Find something in a guy's basement in Italy. Because
exactly,
the Italians, for some reason, are the film hoarders of the world.
And I believe a reel or two was missing of Empire, and they found that in Brazil.
Brazil makes sense.
Yeah, like, because both those markets heavily into piracy and duplications, so it's very likely that these were reels that were stolen, but originally. But guess what? If they can be in good enough condition to restore to a point where it looks like it could be a physical release on 4K Blu-ray from Fox, but Fox and the Lucasfilm have said that there's no possibility of releasing the original, Bullshit.
They will.
Oh yeah.
They will. When George passes.
Well, not to mention they haven't. Here's the thing: these projects are known well enough that they could easily be shut down, but they haven't been. It almost makes me feel like they're getting they're letting them restore them so that they can then, after they're restored, they can then either purchase the restored prints because they are from a private collection, or shut them down and say, give us all the stuff you have, and they could just use that to go on.
Yeah, but there's also the fact that there was, for a very long time, very, very, very long time, there was someone that re-edited all the prequels to cut out a lot. Like there's a fan edit where it's like 30 minutes for it's like 45 minutes for all three of them. Like in terms of length, for every single individual one, it's like 45 minutes to an hour at most. Cut down and getting rid of all the bullshit. But I remember watching those, and those were pretty good. But yeah, going back to Dragonaut, overall, like it's something worth watching. I'm a big fan of the opening song is probably one of the most played anime openings I own. I will admit,
in terms of music, it has good music. Like it's a good theme for sure.
Yeah, the composer for this series, my golden goose is to find an original soundtrack for this series, because it did get released as an original. There is an original soundtrack release for this series. The only problem is you can't find it for shit. But the other significant show that the composer Koyusuke Yamashita has done is Chirafu. He's done all the music for Chirafu, and if you've watched that series, it's very Japanese. It's a sports anime, but it's a very Japanese sport, because it's something that doesn't exist here in the US. It's it's a game, it's an old Japanese game.
Okay, I was gonna say, it's not like that game where
based on poetry.
Oh, okay. It's not like that show where it's just two girls standing on top of a flotation device trying to hit each other off with their butts.
No, that is one of those series that I would love to tackle on this show. Keijo is hilarious for
girl
all
butt
the wrong
sumo,
reasons.
basically.
Keijo is hilarious because it understands it's stupid. It knows it's dumb, so it goes ham hog on it.
Like, your special technique is that you got a badonkadonk and you can hit somebody off faster than the other person, or you turned real fast. There's literal demon possession at one point.
There's a girl's butt who is literally possessed by a demon.
Yes, of course. But yeah, that would be one definitely for another show.
Yes, that is one of those that I'm waiting for them to release that series, Funimation to release that series in the classic line, so I don't have to pay for the friggin' DVDs. Because the classics line is just pure Blu-ray, so I don't have to pay $60 because you're printing the DVDs with the Blu-rays.
Yeah, it'll cost you like 30 or 20.
Yeah, exactly. So eventually, whenever Keijo gets announced as in the classics line, then I'm gonna buy it. And then we'll cover it on the show, because then it's relatively affordable. And also it's available for streaming and whatnot anyway. But before we get into what is essentially our anime book club, which is Tokyo Godfathers. We're going to take a quick, 5-minute break. And let me pull up it's going to be an 8-minute break, folks. So enjoy some more Cryo Shell, which, by the way, when I did there is one song that Cryo Shell does, and they've redone it multiple times. Gravity Hurts. That every time I hear that song, I think of Dragonaut. And yeah. So anyway, guys, enjoy some more Cryo Shell, and when we come back, we're going to be talking Tokyo Godfathers. Hey guys, Ken Reels here, and I hope you're enjoying this anime. But I'm here to talk about my other podcast, Movie Nation. That's right, Movie Nation is a podcast dedicated to talking about the movies like it's a national pastime. Every week I talk about the latest releases that are playing at the local Cineplex near you, or not near you, depending on where you live. We also talk about a small selection of major news stories that go on within the movie sphere, and as a lover of movie trailers, we always get to talk about a Movie Nation trailer of the week. And then we talk about a topic that's either related to the news or even a major release. We've talked about unconventional superhero films, we've talked about the poor marketing of movie musicals as of late, and I've even gotten personal and talked about how I expanded my cinematic repertoire. The podcast happens every week, and we record it live on twitch.tv/KenReels, and you can check out the audio version over on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or Stitcher, or you can even just check out the podcast over at movie-nation.com. Here's looking at you, kid. Welcome back, ladies and gents, to the show. And now you can hear Alex.
Yay!
Because I now have a 4K monitor and a 1080p monitor, OBS is rendering everything in 4K rather than 1080 on my 1080p monitor, so now all the text is tiny. But enough of my blabbing about the stream. We're going to go ahead and talk about Tokyo Godfathers, which when I originally planned this, I was just like, this was supposed to be a December episode. And Tokyo Godfathers is very much the ultimate anime Christmas movie. In a way, it's the only anime Christmas movie.
This one is fresh because I watched it literally this morning. And
I watched it last night again.
And I'm watching it and I'm going, oh, there's a lot of Christian stuff in this.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a rarity that they tackle that. It's not very big as far as I can tell in Japanese culture to begin with.
No, it isn't. It's very... But that's also Satoshi Kon. Satoshi Kon, for those of you who don't know, is a prolific Japanese director who passed away in 2008, I believe. Something like that.
Just pulled it up. 2010.
2010, yeah. And
he's the director of Paprika. I've seen that.
Yep, Paprika, Perfect Blue, which I consider one of the most perfect anime films of all time. Because it totally works as a live action film, but because it's animated, it can do so much more. And that was Kohn's whole MO. He would create these films that could work in live action, but because they're animated, they could do so much more with the material. And it shows in Tokyo Godfathers because there's these beautiful sequences of animation and emotion from the characters, and you're just like, wow, this is gorgeous.
Yeah, you can see it's at that transition point where a lot of Japanese animation was moving to completely digital, but it still has a hand-drawn, painted feel.
Yeah. It's like, this is widely considered in the anime community as the ultimate Christmas film. Like, you watch this at Christmas if you're an anime fan.
I can see it. I mean, it's they rip elements from different things, so it's a little bit of, like, obviously it's on the nose. It's supposed to be like the Three Wise Men.
It's actually loosely based on a novel by Peter B. Kane called Three Godfathers.
Okay, but
it's about a trio of bank robbers who become godfathers to a newborn child.
Okay, and in this case, they changed it to three homeless people.
Yes, in the case of this, it's three homeless people end up finding a newborn baby in the street.
Well, specifically finding it in a trash heap, but it's basically like their version of a manger.
Yeah. And like the Christian allegories are abundant in this.
Yeah, some of it's like we just described, or like right
it
on
opens
the nose.
up.
Some of it is a little bit
like
deeper.
Yeah,
though.
the whole movie opens up with a nativity scene,
and they're having Christmas mass.
Yeah.
I had asked you before, I'm like, is there an English dub of this? You're like, nope, no, or at least not yet at the time. And I went, okay. And in watching it, I'm like, oh, I see why Sony was like, this won't fly in the US theaters right now. At least not when it came out in 2003. Or even today, and everything being much more PC oriented and social justice warriors and everything. It's like, no, there is a lot of language in here that isn't. It's not conducive to your traditional Christmas film. Maybe a little more Bad Santa.
Yeah, it's. I mean, when it comes to anime and Christmas, there's a lot of anime Christmas episodes, but this is really the only movie.
Well, not to mention it
around Christmas.
I've seen a lot of Christmas anime episodes, and it's very much in the vein of like, oh, this is what we think Christmas is like. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like,
also Christmas
elements.
in Japan. Christmas in Japan is more like Valentine's Day in the West.
Yeah, but this movie, in the first few minutes, is more Christmassy than actual, like any episode I've ever seen that was a Christmas themed episode.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like, not only is it more grounded in reality, it's more like this is what. It's not just the Japanese interpretation of Christmas and the Christianity aspect of Christmas. It's like it's almost as if they got a Western, like from the States, writer and director to make an anime.
Well, Satoshi Kon was like one of the first Japanese directors to specifically make his films for an international audience. Like, legitimately, he would make his films with the intention of putting them out internationally. I think nowadays there are a lot of directors that are adapting to that style, but Kon was really the first to do that.
Because even the style of the character designs is much more
Western.
Yeah, there's less traditional designs. Like even the clothing they wear and everything. If you literally took everything about all the characters and the place settings in this, without like doing like wide angle shots of Tokyo, if you took them, each one of these characters doesn't necessarily signify like super Japanese looking.
Yeah.
You could have placed them in any major city like New York or something in the States, and the setting of the film wouldn't have felt any different.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I mean, like, we have our three main characters. We have Jin, we have Hana, and Miyuki. And Jin is your general bum kind of character.
Seems to be what, in his 40s or 50s, something like that.
Yeah. And Hana is a transvestite.
Yes, back when that was still like the traditional way you would say that.
Yes.
Like because not transgendered, transvestite in this case specifically, and there is a difference, right?
Yes.
And some of the opening lines of the movie, I'm like, oh, I know what I'm in for now. Just how the banter between the characters is colorful, to say the least, and I could imagine being the person there that had to subtitle it, going, "Oh boy," because there's a whole bunch of gay epithets and swears back and forth, and it seems angry at first, but then you realize that that's just how their weird dynamic is. That's how they talk to each other.
Yeah. And then Miyuki is a high school student who ran away from home after, as we find out, a violent argument with her father.
But she says she can go back whenever she wants.
Yeah. And as the story progresses, and they're just kind of like trying to get this kid, and they end up trying to find the parents of this kid, and it involves this entirely huge, massive escapade throughout Tokyo.
Yeah, like it really gets set off. Like they have their they have to wait through church, which they're not too pleased with. Well, Hannah was fine with it, and it seems to be fairly Christian religious throughout the film. But they decide that they're going to get the teenager wife. Well, why am I drawing a blank on her name now? But they want to get her a Christmas present, which was basically some books.
Yep.
And while looking for the books in the pile of garbage, that's when they find the baby, and they're like, "Who would throw out a baby?"
Yep. And Jin immediately goes like, "Just take the kid to the police," like the common sense thing. And then Hana's who just had a conversation in the previously that she kind of has these motherly instincts in a way, and she always wanted to be a mother, and she kind of starts treating the kid like a kid, like her kid, and the two of them are just like, oh god damn it, kind of like, we're gonna play along.
And then the rest of them are like, okay, well, one night, and then we got to bring the kid to the police.
Yeah. And then everything, all hell breaks loose, essentially.
Yeah, like it starts in the morning. Hannah has a breakdown and doesn't want to give the baby up, and explains, "I never really knew my parents. I grew up on the street, and I want to make sure this kid finds a good home, because if we hand the baby in to the police, it'll get in foster care, and I grew up in foster care, and I'm a mess," and blah blah blah. And they're like, "Okay, so we're going to go on a mission to find the parents."
And the only clue they have is a locker key that they found with the baby. And so they open up the locker and find a bunch of shit. They find a bunch of photos of who they assume are the parents, and then they also find another key. And now they're taking a look and trying to figure out, okay, where are the parents? And they end up in their journey, they end up going to a cemetery, because they're like, they're gonna steal shit from the offerings and the cemetery. And in pure miracle fashion, they find all these baby products in front of one of the graves.
Which is kind of dark when you think about it.
It's dark, but it's played for comedy, so you're kind of laughing, and then you think about it and you're just like, oh, yeah, it's pretty dark.
Yeah, because there's really only one reason you'd put all that stuff at a grave.
Yeah. And once they leave the cemetery, they encounter a car in the middle of the road, and turns out there's a Yakuza boss trapped under the car. And they end up getting him out from under the car, and the Yakuza boss is like, oh, I was going to visit the old man, and my daughter's getting married. And they're just like, come with me, you saved my life, come with me to the wedding. And as a result, turns out the groom is the reason why Jin's on the street.
Like the movie ends up, as it twists and turns, becoming like a real old school, like 70s 80s comedy of errors sort of thing, where
it's ultimate, like it's a very great folly kind of comedy. And it's just so, and it's very organic when it comes to finding out what is behind all these characters and their backstories. And it very much presents them in a very great fashion in that sense.
Yeah, like at one point, like it might be jumping a little bit, but they come to like, because I know in Japanese culture they still frown upon homosexuality. It's not like, I don't think it's like illegal like in some countries.
It's
but like,
gotten more lenient as
time goes on. This is still almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
When it was like, it's there, you don't talk about it, sort of deal. But they go to I guess a gay club.
They go to a gay club which Hana was a former
employee before being homeless.
Yeah.
And that's where you sort of see the backstory there, like where this club was where Hana felt the most with family, even referring to the barmaid, bar boss as mother.
Yeah.
And like you said, like it's almost like little vignettes where you see the backstories of each of the characters and how they ended up on the street and who they were and what was important to them and what they lost and that sort of deal. So it's interesting that
how somehow the baby being with them is gracing them with all this
knowledge,
reminiscent
advances.
And that is essentially what this whole movie is. It's about second chances on multiple levels. And you just kind of get, and then in pure folly fashion, they end up finding who they think is the mother, giving the baby to the mother. Turns out, no, that wasn't the mother. The mother's baby died in childbirth. And
she had one of those psychotic breaks. Yeah.
She had a psychotic break and stole the baby from the hospital. And so now we have this huge action scene where with Jin riding a bicycle chasing this truck, and there's a constant joke, Jin going like, "We're not action heroes," and it turns out he's in the middle of an action scene.
Yeah, to the point where like previously his sort of arc was he ended up seeing sort of a vision, I guess, almost of what his future would be like, being homeless, and that he found an older man, probably in the 70s or 80s, a drunk just like him, dying, and he spends his last moments with him where all the guy wants to do is drink. And then they witness a car crash, and there's some crazy stuff that happens. He gets beat up and almost dies, and he's like, you can see sort of the evolution where instead of getting depressed, he's like, I'm going to help that baby. And in that chase with the bike, somehow catches up, grabs the baby out of the vehicle, falls to the ground, hurts himself real bad. Baby's fine.
Yeah. And then what was surprising to me is the fake mother survived the crash.
Well, she had her seatbelt on, so fake mother grabs the baby and then like is
climbs this like rundown department store
and thinks, I'll just kill myself and the baby so we can be together in heaven.
Yeah. It's just like, woo, jeez. Yeah, this in pure Satoshi Kon fashion, he likes to get dark. He really does.
And and then it's up to all of them to sort of like, how are we going to save this baby? They try to talk her down off the roof, and she's like, nope, I'm going to jump. And I'm like, wait, is this movie going to end with a dead, splattered baby? Is that why this movie didn't get an English dub? And no,
nope.
they end up holding on as best they can, and they get the baby.
Yep.
In the most ridiculous way possible.
The most ridiculous way possible in a final last miracle given from God to the baby, I guess.
Yeah, like Hannah does her best Jackie Chan move from Police Story, and jumps, grabs.
I would not be surprised if they were literally referencing Police Story with that,
because it was almost shot for shot, except outdoors instead of indoors in the mall. But like, jumps, grabs baby, lands on roof breaks, grabs banner. The banner starts swinging them down to the ground like they're going to die, and then you sort of, as if like grace of God, like you said, a beam of light sort of hits them as the sunrise comes up, and a gust of wind slowly lowers them like a parachute to the ground.
Yeah. And there's we haven't really talked about Miyuki a lot, and the fact that she stabbed her father before she ran away. And it was all over a cat. And actually, one of my favorite jokes was the fact that Jin makes a joke that, oh, I'm going to eat one of the cats, because they end up going into this abandoned building, and there's a whole bunch of cats. And then Jin makes that joke, and then it cuts to Miyuki surrounded by cats who are just like, oh, hell no, you're not. And that is that's one of the best visual gags of the movie.
Oh, by far. Like, and that's in a movie that has some of the best and most detailed visual style I've ever seen.
Yep. 100%.
Some of the background scenes could have been a photo. That's how well they were drawn, as far as and again, it could have been New York City, could have been nothing on the West Coast. Everything on the West Coast looks different, but it could have been Boston, it could have been Detroit, it could have been Toronto, it could have been any of the older cities here. The way it was designed, like you said, very I guess world oriented. It doesn't. I've seen a lot of animate Tokyo, but I've never seen the grime added to it, like to make it almost look like this could have been Paris. This could have been, any old city in Europe.
And I mean, the book The Three Godfathers was actually adapted in 48 by John Ford as a Western with John Wayne.
Okay, so and I get that because the one thing Japan loves is they love their cowboys. So
Yep.
so I could have seen the
would not be surprised if Cone was inspired by that.
And do we give the sort of twist at the end when the baby's reunited with the family and they want to thank the people that
yeah, sure.
Yeah. The family comes on in to thank the homeless people. The father turns and looks and goes like wide-eyed and
well, no, it's not that's not the father, that's the policeman.
Sorry, that's right, the policeman.
The policeman that was in charge of finding the baby. Right,
yeah.
And it turns out it's Miyuki's father.
Yeah, exactly. So sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant. Everything, her father comes in is what I meant. But I didn't want to spoil it.
And then the movie just ends.
So the whole idea is that everything was intertwined by fate or God or whatever.
Yeah. It's this is honestly I'm super happy that G Kids now has it, which means we'll get a nice, beautiful print of this. It'll look gorgeous, and we'll actually be able to own this film because fuck you, Sony, for not releasing a Blu-ray of this.
Well, and Jin, interestingly enough, you notice how his name is not spelled like the traditional Jin; it's spelled like the drink.
Well, that's the intention.
Yeah, obviously.
Like immediately. I'm like,
but the one thing we forgot to mention is his story arc comes full circle in when they visit the hospital. He ends up being inadvertently reunited with his long lost daughter, who's a nurse.
Yeah,
who is like so far beyond being angry with him for leaving and all that sort of stuff to the point where she's like, "I'm getting married. Here's where I live. I know it's not the right time, but give me a phone call when you can. I'd love to talk." So everybody sort of gets a new start. Hannah gets to reunite with her friends and sort of family at the bar, and is probably going to go back there, maybe working again as a lounge singer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also it's kind of hinted that Hannah has AIDS.
Yeah, a few times throughout.
Yeah.
It's
hinted doesn't have much time to live.
Yeah, subtly and not so subtly, but also specifically when they go to the bar and I guess the barmaid has a discussion about a friend that passed and asked, was it with AIDS? It's like, oh, no, not this time. So it's like, it's clear that it's in that specific community.
Yeah.
Handled much, even though there's gruff, the language in it is pretty gruff. The story's handled with a lot more grace and finesse and attention to detail than, to be honest, a lot of not just anime, but a lot of Eastern movies don't have that. Even novels don't have the kind of depth that we have here. It's not even just a translation issue; it's a cultural thing. This really felt like it was written and directed and could have easily been adapted as a like regular theatrical movie from like an art house picture here sort of thing.
Yeah. And that's kind of Satoshi Kon. This is why Satoshi Kon is considered one of the greatest like original anime film directors of all time.
And to be honest, he only ever did like 4 or 5 directed theatrical works, which is going to be one of those things of people for years are going to go, what could have been, had he had another 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah. And he really only picked up with his original stuff late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. And Paprika, I think, wasn't that nominated or for a foreign language film or something at the...
Yes, it was nominated for foreign language film at the Academy.
Which, you're up against the best live action films in the world, and your anime is in competition for that. That says a heck of a lot.
Yeah. I'm like I like Satoshi Kon. When I ended up seeing Perfect Blue during G-Kid's re-release of it, like a year or two ago, in theaters, because I was just like, oh, I know the infamousy of Satoshi Kon. I had never seen Perfect Blue. I had never seen anything of his work, and I went in pretty blind, and I was just like, oh, Jesus.
I still haven't seen it. I do want to see it. Problem, as a teenager, I got that confused with the hentai. With like a bunch of them, because they used to all get all that sort of stuff back in the day when you were like trying to look up stuff in the Japanimation section. It was like that would be like right next to porn, and you're like, is that porn? I don't think I'm allowed to rent that, even though I had heard of the movie. I'm like, if a lot of anime people are talking about it, it can't be porn, right? Well, no, it's not. It's just, it was unfortunately lumped in at the same time when that was all together. Like, because remember the 90s, the Japanimation section.
So
it's really high up on my list of things to watch, especially now that there is like a brand new transfer.
And for the record, just like two weeks ago, something like that, G-Kids announced the actual dates for the theatrical release. So it's going to be March 6th and March 11th, or 9th and 11th, sorry. 9th and 11th. And I believe the 11th is going to be the dub, the brand new dub that they did. And the 9th is going to be the sub. And my hope is that G-Kids does another re-release in December. Because, like, that's a perfect excuse for a bunch of anime fans to sit down and watch the quintessential Christmas anime film. Even if they
don't, local art film houses will, as long as they're allowed to. Like there's the one.
Well, G-Kids is pretty good with that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, like because the Studio Ghibli stuff, like every, what is it, like 6 months now, there's like a festival at one of the major theater chains.
Yeah, now that G-Kids owns all of Ghibli's library.
Yeah, I'm talking like even they do that.
Yeah,
but
even before then.
Before that, they used to go to the major ones. The local art house theater here, that it does like second run major movies, but they also do first run whenever these sorts of things come out. Right around Christmas, they showed Perfect Blue, and I just didn't get a chance to go see it. But it's fairly regular for, if you've got a decent sized town, to have an art house theater that'll show anime now more and more. And G-Kids and some of these companies are much more willing to do screenings like this now of their Blu-rays, and especially when this is going to have a 4K release, you said, right?
Yep, 4K. Well, it's not going to get a 4K Blu-ray release. It's a 4K restoration.
Which means that'll be the copy that they send out digitally to theaters.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not going to be like watching it on like, big screen 35 millimeter film, but it's going to be better than watching it at home.
Yeah, especially given that they did the 4K restoration on Perfect Blue, and that was perfect. That was beautiful.
So, if you get a chance, it's definitely worth seeing, especially, that it's going to be dubbed. And I'm assuming they might even do a retranslation of some of the subs on it too. But I hope they don't change the language too much in the dub, because it might change the meaning. It might change the feel of it.
Usually, when it comes to G-Kids dubs, they're not too bad. Because I know the company that they contract out for the dubs are pretty good.
Okay. Could you imagine how hilarious
they haven't announced any of the cast, which has me excited when they announce some of the cast.
Okay, yeah, but could you imagine if it had been like 4 kids years ago that got a hold of this?
Oh God.
Half the movie wouldn't have happened. It just would. It just wouldn't exist.
It would have been an OVA, not a movie.
Hannah would just be an ugly woman, just like, who's that ugly lady? And it
like they did with Crowler in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX.
Yeah, they would have done something like that, and and all the F-bombs would have been changed to like farmer or some random words or something. Oh, stop, you farmer, you stupid farmer. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's right. Stop being a farmer.
Yeah, this is definitely. I'm super excited that it was just sheer coincidence that G Kids announced they got the rights and everything, and it was.
Well, that's
just
the thing. Like, we were going to record before Christmas, then Christmas stuff happened, and then January comes, and it's like, oh my God, finding the right time, and then bam, right in the middle, smack dab of there, you end up getting all this news.
Yeah, according to Wikipedia, they literally announced it on my birthday in December that they had got the rights, and I'm just like, oh God. I had seen it like a couple days earlier, a couple days later, because of just the flow of news from my feeds and whatnot. I was just like, oh shit, yes. And it like this is such a good film, and I'm so happy that it's gonna be more readily available. Because oh God, watching this on Crackle was fun.
Which is not available here. And I had to resort to other means, but to be honest, if there's no possible way to watch it in my country legally, I kind of have to watch it another way.
Exactly. And that's my personal belief when it comes to this stuff.
Like, for instance, if the G Kids release had been out now, I would have purchased a copy to watch it that way. But because it was not available, I had to resort to watching an HD stream other ways. But it was like, holy moly! Did I have to jump through some hoops?
Which also makes me think that down the line they'll probably, because G Kids has made the deal with all the Ghibli films for HBO Max here in North America, and I have a feeling that they might start doing some of their other stuff via HBO Max because they already have the deal.
Yeah, like and in Canada, it'll probably be Crave/HBO because they're sort of a combined streaming service here. Or sometimes things end up hitting like Amazon Prime Canada, even though they don't hit the States. Like deals can be weird based on the country. I'm pretty sure.
But G Kids is very much a group that likes giving accessibility to all their stuff.
Exactly. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that they will work it out with whatever the largest platform is in your respective country.
Yeah. At least in the markets that they can. Because I know Umbrella owns Tokyo Godfathers over in Australia. And I think that's through Mad Men or something like that.
Yeah,
probably.
That's one of the bigger labels there. And then England will be a different story. Whatever happens to England when it comes to the streaming rights, I don't know what they have there. It might even be Netflix that they get it or something, because I don't. But think
also,
they have
but also like
we do.
Yeah, but also, England. Most English collectors, they'll just import from the U.S.
Yeah, that's true. Or in the rare occasion that sometimes we get something released in Canada that you guys don't get, they end up taking it from us.
Yeah, exactly.
Because for the most part, like even, you know what's hilarious? A lot of releases now that come out, they might say region A on the back for the Blu-ray. But if you pop it in your computer,
they're not.
No, but you pop it in and it actually is region free. They just happen to print it on the box.
I was hearing with the Australian Blu-ray, I was hearing mixed things, because I would have picked up the Australian Blu-ray because I've imported from Umbrella multiple times. They're great. But there was differing things, whether it was region free or whether it was locked to Australia or not. So I wasn't going to take the risk in importing.
Yeah, I've had to do that a few times, and like I imported the Andromeda TV show, you know, Kevin Sorbo's Hercules in Space. From England on Blu-ray, because that's the only way you could get the Blu-rays. And I was like, is it region free? And nobody could give me an answer. That I ended up putting a little money on my Skype account, and I phoned their customer service over in England, and I'm like, hi, I'm in Canada. are these discs region free? Because I would like to purchase them. And the customer service agent laughed hysterically, then said, yes, give me a second. And said, don't worry, yes, they are completely region free. Okay, thank you, bye. I then leave the computer, come back the next day when I'm like, okay, I'm going to purchase from the website. I log in to my Amazon account, and the Amazon UK product listing had its description changed to region free. Yes, this is region free. It'll play. So that customer service agent got it changed so that even though it was not sold on the US and Canada stores, but they figured if this kid is willing to call, it means that there's probably some demand for it. And then after that, I purchased because I was like, $100 to get the Blu-ray set of all 5 seasons remastered. Like,
that's pretty good. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, it was like 60 British pounds, so like $100 here, and then like $20 for shipping, so about $120, and that's for 5 seasons. And yes, most of them are up converts, upscaled or whatever. They weren't like super remastered, but the previous DVD releases were in Canada were full screen and stereo, and the ones in the States were released by ADV, and they cost like $600 because they're out of print, and they're like widescreen DVDs. I'm like, no matter what, the quality is better. So I've done that a few times, or I've picked up. UK is great for getting really cool steel books that we don't get.
Oh yeah, well UK's
and those are mostly those ones are region free as well.
Yeah, UK's home market is a lot more stronger than North America.
Oh, by far. The only thing is the certain companies you got to watch with, for the most part. Universal, anything they release on Steelbook or any TV shows they release on Blu-ray, they're almost all region free, unless there's a very specific show that isn't. And usually people in the descriptions will say that they're not. But like, I imported Battlestar Galactica, like the modern show, the complete Blu-ray series. It cost me $40 to get it from there, when to get the Blu-rays here was like $200 new. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's the same show it's the same discs even. It just had different packaging.
Yeah. But like Umbrella, I found out owned one of my favorite obscure animated films, and it was a region free DVD, and I'm like, mine.
Totally. Because I forget, do they use PAL, or are they on NTSC there?
They're NTSC.
Yeah, because I thought that they were, like, I know Blu-rays are easy because it's all the same standard everywhere, but they're NTSC.
Australia. I checked.
Oh, Australia's region 4, I think, NTSC, when it's not region free. Because I've purchased some stuff from them, and they get some weird stuff because they're so close to the Orient that we don't get.
Right. Well, when it comes to anime films, like, Australia sometimes gets them like 3 months after they premiere in Japan.
Well, and they'll have their own dubs even sometimes too that we don't have.
Yeah. Like, I'm gonna wait till G-Kids releases this on Blu-ray before I cover it on the show. But I did see Weathering with You, and this will just be a short little segment we'll put here at the end of the episode before we wrap up. But like, Weathering with You, I kind of like more than Your Name.
Fair enough.
It like, as much you're talking like, Your Name is beautiful. I think Your Name is a more simple story compared to Weathering with You. Weathering with You is a little more complicated. And as a result, some of the middle of the movie kind of feels slow, but it very much feels like Shinkai learned his lessons and has adapted every single time to the lessons he learned from previous films. Like with Your Name, he's like, oh, I think I've almost got it. And Weathering with You is just another step closer to being a very, like, a great, great film without any kind of flaws. And also, like, I find that both Shinkai and Mamoru Hosoda have basically adapted Satoshi Kon's philosophy of building a movie for a international audience. Like, it's not just for a Japanese audience, and if it is good, if it's cool, if it's popular in the West, cool. They build it more as an international audience film,
which has been a very hard mindset for them to break. That's their culture has always been very domestic oriented,
right? And like, because I saw it with the interview at the end with Shinkai. Shinkai states, like, I'm really excited that I've become much more popular, popular in the West as I am here in Japan, and it was kind of surprising at first to him that he had gained such a following as a result of Your Name being one of the highest grossing Japanese animated films of all time. And it just, like, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and I'm happy. I'm happy G Kids is picking up where Funimation kind of stepped away, as it were, when it came to releasing certain film, like original film anime films out here in the West.
They're sort of like the quality of Aniplex or the quality of Sentai without the price.
Yeah, they're very much, and also they have connections with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, because literally every year there's at least one film in the best animated category that comes from G Kids.
Well, and just the way they present themselves is very like Janus Films Criterion Collection stuff.
Yeah, you feel the love that goes into every release that they do.
I wouldn't be surprised if eventually they merged with like a Criterion Films, and that became like their animation division.
Yeah. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this episode of This Anime. Next month, I have no idea what actual main topic we're going to be talking about, but I do know what our anime book club is. And we're going to start going through a series called Fibrain. It is available on pretty much every single major streaming platform at this point. It's available on High Dive. It's also available on Crunchyroll, so you can watch it that way. It's a multiple season series, and it pretty much looks to me like a Yu-Gi-Oh knockoff.
Yes.
And this was a 2013 Blu-ray, so it's like a 2012 series when it first started, and it has like 3 seasons, I think. And like the latest season was like 2 years ago, which is interesting. So we're probably going to be covering this series over the course of the next for most of this year, oddly enough. And hopefully it's interesting. If not, we're going to drop it like a hot balloon. But I want to thank Alex for joining me on the show for this episode. It was a very interesting thing because I wanted to... the main reason why I wanted to have a guest on this episode is because I didn't want to just gush about Dragonaut.
I balanced that out for you.
Yeah, because it's... I was well aware that me gushing about the series wasn't going to be as entertaining as having a second opinion.
Fair enough. Yeah, I honestly, I didn't hate it. I'm just saying, I was like, whoa, this show is weird and has some issues.
And even back then, even looking back on it, I was like, I'm sure this show has issues, but I still have love for it. And that's always the good thing about it. And that's what we talk about on this show. We always talk about it from the perspective of what is good about this show and what can you take away from it. And that is always what we do. We will always look for more obscure stuff and what can we take away from this series that is enjoyable. And how can we enjoy this series despite the flaws that we see in it? So yeah, thank you guys for watching. You can follow me at Ken Reels on Twitter and Instagram. Follow the podcast at ThisAnimePod. ThisAnimePodcast.com is where you can find the write-ups and subscribe to the podcast directly. We're on literally every possible platform I can put this podcast on at this point. So if you haven't found us on a podcast platform, I don't know what to tell you. And given the fact that we are increasing Spotify views, awesome if you're listening on Spotify. Please rate, review, like us, whatever you can on any platform that you're listening to. Helps us go up in viewability on suggestions and whatnot. So, Alex, anything you want to pimp out before we leave?
I have cleared out my back catalog of stuff, but This Week in Geek drops usually Mondays, sometimes Tuesdays. So you can always find me online at Deathphase Twig or at This Week in Geek, thisweekingeek.net. That's pretty much it. We don't have anything, I believe, planned for the rest of the week, but you can always subscribe to us on the same platforms that you were talking about. And hopefully I come back and do something like this again with you sometime soon.
Yep. And as always, before we leave, we're going to update our layout with the new show, with our new shows. Bam! There we go. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you guys next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to This Anime.
Okay, master. Let's kill the whole.
No. If anything, just like us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/thisanimepodcast. Follow the podcast on Twitter at ThisAnimePod, or comment on our episode posts over at ThisAnimePodcast.com. That's This Anime Podcast on Facebook, at ThisAnimePod on Twitter, and ThisAnimePodcast.com.
Yes. Oh my god.
This Anime is available on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play/podcasts. If you're listening on one of those platforms, please consider subscribing, rating, and or reviewing on those platforms to help us grow. Every time you do so, it helps This Anime take over